Welcome back to the channel. In today's video we are going over the results of my January theme for my themed Letterboxd 4 series, which was 2025 releases. Now if you're new to this series, this is year 2 that we're doing this series, so I'm going to put this in a playlist with all of the other episodes in this series, but if you're new, basically all this is just every single month I pick a different theme, a different genre, category, whatever it is, and we do a setup video and a results video. The setup video, we just go over what my current Letterboxd 4 is, plus a couple other films that I'm going to watch that month to ultimately figure out what my true Letterboxd 4 is of a specific category. And then this is the results video where, after I've watched all of those, like the 10 films I name in the preview video, plus as many others as I can get to in that calendar month, then we go over the results and see what that final Letterboxd 4 is. So that's what this video is the results for 2025 releases. As far as the rules of this goes, all it really was is just had to be a 2025 wide release. There's a couple films that were 2025 releases. I guess actually I should have rephrased that. It's not really wide releases in 2025 as much as like that's just when the release date was, because like I'm just saying there are some that are 2025 releases that didn't really come out till January 2026, but it's a 2025 film because that's when it had its debut, its festival run, all of that. So it's a little kind of confusing sometimes, but for the most part, I think there's only one or two I can think of that are kind of weird like that. For the most part, they're all pretty definitively 2025 releases. And then also, if you're new to this series, I always do like an exclusions spot. We do rules and exclusions kind of together here, and the exclusions are whenever there is a film that has been used in a previous themed Letterboxd 4, it's ineligible going forward, because at the end of like last year I wanted to have 48 films that I talked about, and then this year I want to have 48 new films that I talk about. Don't want to have just the same film that we're talking about in 6 different categories. So it's anything that was already used in one of the previous 12 months is excluded, and there wasn't any exclusions. There wasn't a 2025 film that happened to sneak into any of the other categories last year. There's a couple that, had they released a little earlier when I did certain categories, there's a good chance that they could have, but ultimately nothing really snuck in, so there's no exclusions. The last thing I'm going to say before we kind of really jump into this is just that all I'm going to talk about this month, there's a whole bunch of films I'm going to talk about here, but I'm only talking about ones that I watched this month. And so if you just want to see kind of my full Letterboxd ranking list, I'm going to put the link to that in the description for everything that I watched, all 2025 releases. But yeah, we're only going to talk about a good chunk of them, but not quite everything that I saw. And first off, we're going to take a look at everything I watched this month that didn't crack the Letterboxd 4. The Housemaid. While it may be a little predictable, the film is full of Paul Feig's signature twists and turns, so there is some fun to be had. Amanda Seyfried is the star, and gives a great performance as she always does. Another Simple Favor. Speaking of Paul Feig's twists and turns, I actually really liked A Simple Favor for that reason. However, this sequel is just flat and lost all the charm and chemistry the first one had. Happy Gilmore 2. There's a joke here and there that kinda make me chuckle, but that's not good enough for a sequel to a classic comedy. I had never seen the original until last year, so I wasn't too upset, but I can see why fans of the first are disappointed by the sequel becoming a cameo fest with poor script. Honey Don't. As a big fan of so many of the actors in this might be my biggest disappointment of 2025. It certainly has its style and pacing, but at just 89 minutes there wasn't enough time to actually delve into anything interesting. The Long Walk. I was not very hopeful for this when I saw the trailers, but I ended up loving it. Cooper Hoffman and David Johnson brought so much heart and gravity to this story, and they are both going to have long and successful careers. Eternity. Our main trio of actors all give great performances, but it's Elizabeth Olsen who stars and anchors the film. I wish the film had made me as emotional as I've seen it make so many others, but it didn't quite go deep enough to me. Wake Up Dead Man. This is my second favorite of the trilogy, and it's pretty damn close to catching the original Knives Out. Josh O'Connor's phone call scene caught me off guard and brought so much emotion to the film. Avatar: Fire and Ash. While I don't love the original film, The Way of Water really worked for me, and I was very excited for this one. Unfortunately, outside of a couple of characters and a few moments, there wasn't much here to elevate it from like to love. Mickey 17. This was my most anticipated film of the year, and while it fell short of those expectations, I still really liked the film. The entirety of the cast are giving interesting performances, and Bong Joon-ho's next film will be one of my most anticipated of that year as well. Caught Stealing. There are a couple scenes in this film that caught me off guard and were executed perfectly. Unfortunately, the entirety of the film didn't live up to those moments, and I left a little underwhelmed. Materialists. I was disappointed to see how many people don't like this film, because I loved it, and it's one of my favorites of the year. Johnson, Evans, and Pascal all have beautiful performances that moved me, and Celine Song has cemented herself as one of my favorite filmmakers. Friendship. I'm familiar enough with Tim Robinson to know that I should have expected some crazy shit when I first watched this, but even with that knowledge, I was still caught off guard. Robinson and Rudd's chemistry is amazing, and this film has a case for being one of my favorite endings of the year. Eddington. I was pretty middle of the road with this on my first watch in theaters, but the second watch bumped it up a little bit more for me. It still doesn't completely come all the way together for me, but there are so many memorable scenes that will stay with me for a long time. Nobody 2. I didn't rewatch the first one in prep for this, but I had a fun enough time with the original, so I thought I would have the same feelings for this one. While the action is still a lot of fun, the film felt a little bland and didn't have the same spark as the original. Wolfman. I was very excited for this film when I first saw the trailer over a year ago, because of how much I loved Lee Whannell's The Invisible Man, as well as Upgrade. Unfortunately, it doesn't live up to those, but I don't think this is a bottom 5 worst of the year like I've seen others proclaim. The Electric State. This, however, does have a fair claim to bottom 5 of the year discussions. No one is giving a bad performance per se, but the lack of chemistry from everyone, combined with the massive budget visuals that also don't add much in a positive way, leaves the whole film feeling empty. Sorry, Baby. This was one of the hardest cuts from the final 4 because of how much I adore this film. Eva Victor stars, directed, and wrote the film, so it is so personal to them, and in turn, I connect with it and feel their passion for the story. The Fantastic Four First Steps. This was one of the rare cases where I liked the movie less on a rewatch. Maybe I was just too excited for the film on first watch and let that sway me, but on this second watch I was a bit underwhelmed by the script and felt the film could have done more. Begonia. While some of Yorgos Lanthimos' films work better than others for me, they all have the same unique energy to them, and this is no different. Emma Stone and Jesse Plemons' chemistry is unmatched, and I hope they continue doing films together for a long time. Train Dreams. An absolutely beautiful film with amazing cinematography that helps you connect with the emotion of the story. Joel Edgerton is great as the lead, but it's William H. Macy who stood out to me, and I wish he was in the conversation more for Best Supporting Actor. Frankenstein. I went in expecting a story more focused on the creature as a monster, but came away moved emotionally by the story instead. Jacob Elordi really commits to the physicality of the role, and would be a worthy Oscar winner if he does go on to win Best Supporting Actor. Jay Kelly. With all the buzz around the film, as well as Clooney and Sandler back in December, I was really excited for this, but found it a little lackluster. I liked the idea of what the final scene was going for, but the film didn't connect with me prior to that point in order for it to land with me. The Testament of Ann Lee. I didn't know much about this film going in, other than Mona Fastfold in the director's chair and Amanda Seyfried in the titular role. I was impressed how much I was moved emotionally from the songs/prayers and the script overall. Superman. This film is an excellent launching point for a new universe to build off of. The film does an excellent job of introducing so many characters, while always keeping the heart of the story focused on Clark Kent and his relationships with those closest to him. No Other Choice. This would have been an excellent choice for Best International Feature, but I can see why it ultimately didn't catch on with the Academy. I wish the film would have pushed it even more and went even darker, but I still had a blast nonetheless. F1. I remember everyone was so excited for this, as Joseph Kosinski's follow-up to Top Gun Maverick, but I wasn't too interested since I'm not interested in Formula One in general. Turns out, you don't need to fully love the subject of a film to still enjoy it if it's a damn good film. 28 Years Later. I wasn't a massive fan of Days Later and Weeks Later, so I was a little pessimistic going into this, but the action of the story had me hooked, and the emotional gut punch at the end made me truly love this and leave the theater absolutely ugly crying. The Life of Chuck. I understand why the third act is the way it is, because it's the emotional thread that ties everything together, but it's the weakest act and runs the longest. I really enjoyed the mystery of the first act and the dancing scene in the second, so I really wanted to love the film, but just can't quite get there. Elio. The film looks beautiful and does a great job at animating space. Unfortunately, the story never pulled me in all the way. I will say I was moved more on a second watch, so maybe it's a film I like more and more the more I watch it. K-Pop Demon Hunters. I haven't seen all the Best Animated Film nominees yet this year, but I can easily see why this is the favorite in the category, even if I don't love it as much as everyone else. The plot is okay, but the real star is obviously the music, which will stick in your brain for a long time. Diane Warren, Relentless. I went into this wanting to get some jokes off at the ridiculousness of having to nominate Diane Warren every single year, but I actually came away a little more of a fan of hers and rooting for her to win. Not this year, obviously, but one of these years I hope she finally gets the win she deserved for so much of her previous work. Oh hi. I knew nothing about this besides Molly Gordon and Logan Lerman as the leads, so I had a blast with the absurd premise. As a film mainly centered in one room, it could have gone sideways quickly, but all the performances were top-notch and kept the film riveting. Now you see me, now you don't. While none of these sequels will ever have the magic the original film did for younger me, this is better than the second. It did feel a little clunky at times, trying to introduce so many new characters, while also bringing back every existing character with cameo entrances, but I think that'll smooth out if/when they make the fourth film. Regretting You. I understand the film needs to create the drama for the story, but it feels like this film had a lot of extra drama that could have been settled by simple conversations that would have made the characters more likable. With that said, I love McKenna Grace, Allison Williams, Dave Franco, and Mason Thames, and they all give solid performances. Die, My Love. The only thing I knew about this film is that Jennifer Lawrence and Robert Pattinson give great performances, so I was definitely caught off guard by the style of the storytelling. I have heard great things about a few of Lynn Ramsey's other films, so I will have to seek those out to see if I like her style or not. Sentimental value. There are several scenes and lines of dialogue that will stay with me a while, and I look forward to watching this again before the Oscar ceremony. Renate Reinsve is becoming one of my favorite actresses, and I hope to see Inga Ipsdotter Liljeus in many films for years to come. Weapons. I really loved the decision to tell this story Rashomon style, as it helped build the tension and mystery from multiple viewpoints. It wasn't as batshit crazy as Zach Gregor's last film, Barbarian, but Amy Madigan's performance as Aunt Gladys really brings the film home. Now, this is the point in the video where I talk about anything that left the Letterboxd 4 from the beginning of the month to now, but nothing did. We kept with the same final 4, so without further ado, let's take a look at that final Letterboxd 4. Hamnet. The powerful story of love and loss that inspired the creation of Shakespeare's timeless classic masterpiece, Hamlet. The film is nominated for 8 Oscars at the upcoming Academy Awards. Best Picture, Best Director for Chloe Zhao, Best Actress for Jessie Buckley, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Casting, Best Production Design, Best Costume Design, and Best Score. Hamnet was released in 2025 and was directed by Chloe Zhao. The film stars Jessie Buckley, Paul Mescal, and Emily Watson. Now, I admittedly am not the most, up to date with Shakespeare and the most familiar with all of his work. Obviously, I know of Hamlet, I've heard of it, I probably have seen some, high school plays or something like that, but admittedly, I'm just not too familiar with everything, and then I'm also not, even less so familiar with kind of the creation of it and of the real story of their son, and so when I first heard about Hamnet, I remember kind of being a little skeptical that not that the film would be not good, but skeptical in terms of I didn't know if I would love it. But I always still had faith in it because I love Chloe Zhao as a director. Jessie Buckley is one of my favorite actresses. There's, multiple things that were going on with the film where even though if I was kind of maybe a little nervous that I wouldn't love it, I still was optimistic that I'm like, at least it's going to be a good film. And lo and behold, it turns out that I actually just loved the film. I talked about a little bit earlier in the honorable mentions section, the Miss the Cut section, I talked about 28 Years Later and talked about how that film left me ugly crying. The only film I can remember or that I can think of besides 28 Years Later that was brought me as close to that is Hamnet. It is a very emotional but beautiful. I think my original Letterboxd review was I said that it's a beautiful, then heartbreaking, then beautifully heartbreaking film. It gives you all of the emotions. The first act of this film is really just lovely, kind of seeing the romance between Agnes and Will, and seeing the way that they first meet and fall in love and start a family, and all of that it's this very beautiful kind of beginning of a film. And there's one scene in particular that really kind of, in a weird way to think of all the kind of the emotional scenes, the scene that almost made me touched me the most is the scene where I guess don't really want to give too much of a spoiler away, but it involves kind of an animal and all of the family kind of gathering around the said animal, and the way that Jessie Buckley is playing this mother to her children and kind of teaches them, you whistle up into the sky and they carry a message for you, and it was just this moment of watching her being a mother to her three kids, and seeing how happy she is in this role. It just was such a beautiful and kind of touching moment that I think made me a little bit more emotional, because I knew it wasn't going to last. I knew things were going to go sideways. I knew it was going to tragedy was going to strike, because I mean it's a film. At this point, I kind of understood that it was about the making of Hamlet, and so I understood that something was gonna go awry there in the second and third act of the film, and so it was almost felt like it was this last kind of moment, and I almost recognized it in the moment as being that kind of final moment of beauty for the family before it kind of gets tragic. So again, just all of the acting in this is phenomenal. Obviously, Jessie Buckley is the front runner. She's going to win Best Actress. She's absolutely amazing. Paul Mescal was. It's hard to say, that he was like snubbed for the Oscar, because the acting categories this year were just so stacked. There were so many contenders. And obviously, we saw what ended up happening with Sinners, where it got a couple extra nominations, and so Delroy Lindo was able to leapfrog him there at the Oscars. But he obviously would have been very worthy of a nomination. For me, in particular, I've said it multiple times on my channel. If you're the one person that happens to watch multiple of my videos, you'll have seen the way that I've talked about Jacoby Jupe. I believe it's pronounced. First I was saying Jacoby, but I think it's Jacoby. That's at least how I heard Jessie Buckley pronouncing it, and I've heard a couple other people say Jacoby. But Jacoby Jupe is the star of this film, and if I've always thought about doing this type of video where it's like, if I could secure one person like an Oscar nomination, like in every category or whatever, this would be my pick for this category, and this would have been like my number one overall pick. If I was in charge and I could pick one thing, it would be getting Jacoby Jupe a Best Supporting Actor nomination, because he is phenomenal. He is to me, in a weird, he's the heart of the film. Obviously, as the title character, he is what makes this film so emotional. His relationship first with Will, his father, and then seeing the relationship. You don't see it too much with his mom, but it's there. But then mostly with his twin sister, like the relationship he has with her. He's just so great at doing all of this. And then when he kind of has some scenes later in the film where he's kind of more isolated, kind of by himself, and it's in a way you would think that maybe, because he's alone on screen, and you think like it might be hard for a kid that young to be acting, and all of a sudden he still is just commanding the screen and is making you so emotional. And then, again, I should mention Noah Jupe as well. Emily Watson also is great as the supporting actress. Like, it's just top to bottom, it's filled with phenomenal performances. It's a film that I went in so emotional, or left so emotional. There is a lot that is kind of said about the final song that plays at the end of the film, and some people really didn't like that choice. I don't mind it, because it's what is the name of it? In the Nature of Daylight, something like that. It's just a beautiful piece of music, and so when I'm watching an emotional moment in a film and have this emotional moment that is being accompanied by a very emotional music, like, it all came together for me. I didn't mind it, and it's a film that, again, it's just so intimate and beautiful that I truly just came away with, on first watch, I was like, oh yeah, this is one of my favorite of the year, and then on second watch, I was instantly like, this is a 5-star film. I absolutely love Hamnet. Marty Supreme. Marty Mauser, a young man with a dream no one respects, goes to hell and back in pursuit of greatness. The film is nominated for 9 Oscars at the upcoming Academy Awards. Best Picture, Best Director for Josh Safdie, Best Actor for Timothée Chalamet, Best Original Screenplay, Best Casting, Best Editing, Best Cinematography, Best Production Design, and Best Costume Design. Marty Supreme was released in 2025 and was directed by Josh Safdie. The film stars Timothée Chalamet, Gwyneth Paltrow, and Odessa Zion. Now, on my channel in the past, I have talked about like the specific years that I kind of was really getting into movies. 2017 was like the first year that I was going to, I think, like a lot of movies, and then 2019 was kind of the first year where I was like going to movies by myself and like just fell in love with cinema as a whole. And it was somewhere in there, probably more so in like the 2017 2018 era, but also 2019 as well. Those were in the eras where it was like if there was a movie I loved, I would go see it four, five, six, 7 times in theaters. Like it was, I would go so many times, and it was just like I just kept loving to watch like the same movie and over again. I have since kind of, I don't want to say like have changed necessarily like in that style, but like I there's so many movies I want to watch now. I think that's the big key thing is I've expanded what I'm willing to watch, what I like to watch, and so it gets to a point where yeah, there's just so many things that I want to see that I don't have time to watch the same film so many times. But Marty Supreme, I've seen it 3 times in theaters now in probably like 3-4 weeks, like a 3-4 week span, because I saw it and then I immediately needed to drag a friend to see it a couple days later, and then I saw it a couple days after Oscar nominations were announced, because once the nominations are announced, I go and I rewatch everything again. In prep for, or I guess in anticipation of the Oscars. So I basically went to the theater, and each time I saw it, it's one of those that like there's some films that I used to go see multiple times in the theater, and you either kind of maybe get a little bit sick of it, not really for me. I don't necessarily get sick of it, but it also just kind of like doesn't hold you the same way. Maybe some of the scenes that were a little bit more emotional, maybe you're kind of prepared for them and they don't, you don't catch you as off guard, or if it's a horror movie or like a thriller or something like this that's very kind of suspenseful and very anxious, anxiety inducing, maybe it gets to those moments and it doesn't quite have the same impact for you anymore because you know what's coming. But Marty Supreme is one of those that doesn't matter how many times I watch this, no matter how I know what's going to happen, I know what choices the characters make, I know how it affects those future choices, I know what the consequences are. It's still, every time I'm watching it, I'm on the edge of my seat because I'm so tense and so nervous for what these characters are doing, specifically Marty. There's a couple other characters that kind of join in on his shenanigans a little bit, but it's mostly all Marty Mauser. But it's still just one of those films that it's just, as it's going, I find myself just nervous and tense, and which is just funny because I know everything is, not that everything is going to be okay, but I know what's going to happen, so it's like I should be prepared for it, but it still gets to me. Timothy Chalamet as Marty Mauser, he's as much as a lock as Jessie Buckley is for Best Actress. I think Timothy Chalamet is almost there as much of a lock. The only thing that makes me a little nervous is just you both have Wagner Moura and Leonardo DiCaprio are both, I think, very, very strong contenders that just haven't quite got rolling yet, and if one of those, I guess Wagner Moura is not nominated, but if like Leo wins BAFTA, maybe there's a little bit of nerves going into Oscar night on who's going to win that category. But for the most part, I think Timothy Chalamet has it pretty locked up, and he's phenomenal in the film. He would be an amazing Best Actor winner for this performance. But I mean, it's everyone. I mean, you've got. We're going to talk about. It was obviously nominated for best casting. The best casting Oscar. When I do my category breakdown videos, when we talk about that, we're going to dive real deep into this because there is the casting here is just phenomenal. Where you have, a Timothy Chalamet and a Gwyneth Paltrow. You have these classic like amazing top of their game actors. You have newcomers like Odessa Zion, who isn't particularly exactly new, but is newer in terms of kind of being in the big spotlight. Then you've got Kevin O'Leary. You've got I can't think of what the actual actor's name. I think his like online name is Patrick Ewing. Play on Patrick Ewing. As like his, I can't remember his name, but as his like buddy, his friend that gets that paints the ball, gets the balls orange for him. You've got Penn from Penn and Teller that's in there a little bit. You've got Tyler the Creator. Obviously, Tyler the Creator has some acting in his background, but not like a big Hollywood production. So you've got all these guys that aren't typical. I mean, and then you even beyond that, you've got like Tracy McGrady and Kemba Walker are randomly in there. You've got George Gervin's in there. You've got the I don't know what his name is, but the homeless man with the golden voice, like he kind of makes a cameo. You get all these guys that aren't real, big name actors that are either playing significant roles or just playing little cameos, but all doing it so beautifully. Like the casting, it makes it feel so real in a sense that sometimes, I mean, I kind of, Gwyneth Paltrow I think is the one that kind of stands out to me. She does a good job of kind of blending in as this like movie star, but as being Gwyneth Paltrow, being a movie star herself, sometimes she's the one that doesn't necessarily blend in the way that like Timothée Chalamet, big name movie star, but like he's really just, I lose him in this performance, is Marty Mauser. And then besides that, it feels like everyone else is just real people in this real world. Like it doesn't feel like you're watching a film. It feels like you're watching a real life thing about someone that is just making the absolute worst decisions over and over, and is just, a narcissist, and is someone who is not very thoughtful about people around him. And you see all of the decisions, all the chaos that comes from his decisions. It's one of those films that for me is just very enjoyable. I understand there are people that don't necessarily like the Safdie brothers, and I guess it's specifically, we've now seen that it's more so Josh Safdie's style of, Good Time, Uncut Gems, and this, where it is just nonstop chaos from start to finish, and it's just a anxiety trip. I understand there's some people that aren't, particularly fond of that kind of filmmaking. For me, I love it. I love kind of, again, if you're a film and you have a goal and you achieve your goal, and obviously the goal here is just to make you anxious and nervous for 2 hours and 20 minutes, however long this film is, it accomplishes that goal, and so I love it. It's something that works really well for me. So I know this isn't going to work well for a lot of people, but it works so well for me. One battle after another. When their evil nemesis resurfaces after 16 years, a band of ex-revolutionaries reunite to rescue the daughter of one of their own. The film is nominated for 13 Oscars at the upcoming Academy Awards. Best Picture, Best Director for Paul Thomas Anderson, Best Actor for Leonardo DiCaprio, Best Supporting Actress for Teyana Taylor, Best Supporting Actor for Benicio del Toro, Best Supporting Actor for Sean Penn, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Casting, Best Editing, Best Cinematography, Best Production Design, Best Sound Design, and Best Score. One Battle After Another was released in 2025 and was directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. The film stars Leonardo DiCaprio, Sean Penn, and Chase Infinity. Now, I used to, a couple years ago, even as much as like within, in 2024, I was still doing it, where anytime a new film came out from like a big director that I'm just not ultimately the most familiar with their work, I used to love to just watch their entire filmography before going and seeing that movie. And that's where, on my channel, I've done some director ranked videos. That's where you get like a Richard Linklater director ranked video, and M. Night Shyamalan, before their new films came out, I just kind of, binged everything. I just posted James Gunn a couple days ago. That's when I used to, really just binge their entire filmography going into their new film, so I was ready for it. And admittedly, I'm not super familiar with Paul Thomas Anderson. His classic, his best movies that everyone really loves came out just kind of like right before I really got into watching film, and I just haven't gone back and watched them yet. And so I started about 2 weeks maybe before this came out. I started and I decided that's what I was going to do, and I watched his debut film that I'm now drawing a blank on what it's called. Hard 8 or something. It's like the casino one with John C. Reilly. It's weird that I'm drawing a complete blank on what the name of that film is. But I watched that, and I enjoyed it. It was a good film. And then it kind of hit me that I was like, it's pretty obvious that Paul Thomas Anderson, I think, is going to win Best Director. I think it's like just about locked up. I don't see anyone else kind of getting enough momentum to really kind of take over at this point. And I've been doing where I did a couple years ago, I did Christopher Nolan Director's Rank. That was the first one in that series. And then last year I did Sean Baker after he won Director for Nora. And so that video will come after he's officially, Paul Thomas Anderson's officially won Best Director. Again, I'm kind of talking pretty comfortable. I feel pretty confident it's going to happen. So we'll finish the rest of his filmography then. But I'm super excited too, because between the first film and this one, One Battle After Another, And I've also seen, I've seen Punch Drunk Love, and I've seen Licorice Pizza. I've seen a couple of his films here and there. I'm just excited to really dive in, because he's one of those directors, from what I've heard, everything is a hit. And I've heard a lot of people that say that understand that everything he makes is like 4.5 or 5-star films, and I've heard some of them still say that this is his best. And so I'm just really excited to see, like, again, how this fits in with the rest of his filmography. As far as this film goes, this was really interesting because going in, I kind of intentionally avoided a lot of the trailers for the film because I wanted to go in pretty blind. I didn't want to know too much about it. But the only thing I really kind of gained, I saw the one trailer. It played a decent amount before other films that I was seeing, and it was the one of with Leo in the grocery store, and he kind of walks out and he goes to the payphone and he's trying to call and get the rendezvous point, but he can't remember the code, and then I kind of knew that the plot of it was talking about Leonardo DiCaprio's character as being like a stoner and kind of being this like washed up ex-revolutionary, and so I kind of went in thinking, oh, it's just going to be this like straight comedy. But obviously I understood that with Paul Thomas Anderson as the director, I understood that there was going to be some more poignant moments, and it was going to be a little bit more polished than just a straight kind of slapstick comedy or something. But I still was like, oh, but it's still just going to be really funny. And that's what it is. I mean, it is definitely, for stretches, it's really funny. The first act of the film isn't necessarily the most laugh out loud funny, but again, it has a kind of couple chuckles here and there, but it's more serious. And then it's once kind of the second act starts, that not only does like the humor kind of really pick up a little bit, but also like the intensity and the danger and everything from there, where it kind of becomes this like everything happening in like one night, I guess kind of going into the next day, but it kind of, it's all of a sudden the clock kind of starts and it's all of a sudden we're on a chase, we're running for our lives, or we're trying to find someone, trying to find a character, we're trying to do these things and reunite and make sure that we're all safe, and no one is, because like the description says, there's someone that's kind of coming out looking for him, and it really becomes not quite like Marty Supreme level of intense, but it's still very tense, and the film does a great job of showing you so many different, because there's so many characters in this, but it shows you so many different point of views. When it's kind of more focused on Leo, you understand that it's like, you understand the gravity of what's happening, but it's kind of told to this more comedic light of him kind of being a little bit too high and a little too drunk at the moment to try and really comprehend what's going on. And then you've got, it'll focus on Sean Penn's character, and you'll see kind of everything he's doing. And then there's kind of the couple of the other ex-revolutionaries as they're getting captured, and they're being the one, I can't remember his name, but the one that's kind of captured and brought into that like interrogation tent or whatever, and you get this real intense scene there, and then you get kind of the underground stuff with the Christmas adventurers. You get all of these different characters, and it's like you're getting the gravity of what's going on here from all of these other things, and then you kind of get the kind of comedic style focus from Leo that I thought was really well done. The important thing that when you're talking about this film, though, the important thing that I have to talk about is Chase Infinity. She is a star. She is going to, I don't know if she's already kind of started booking future things, but she's going to get a lot of roles in the future because she is incredible, and she is the heart of this film. I remember when I first saw this, and again, we talk about the first act of the film being kind of a couple jokes, but mostly kind of intense and very focused on the revolutionary aspect of the script and of these characters. And then the first act kind of ends, and all of a sudden it opens up with Steely Dan, Dirty Work, and it opens this shot, and Chase Infinity appears on screen. And I remember when I saw this in theaters the weekend it came out, I remember thinking to myself, like, I'm getting choked up. Like, this is an emotional, like, just seeing Chase Infinity, just seeing her while this song is playing, it's just this very beautiful and touching thing that I was like, why am I, like, tearing, like, why am I crying? Like, I wasn't, full on crying, but, kind of eyes watery. And I remember thinking that is, like, embarrassing that, like, a piece of music or just, like, a visual can, like, do that. But I didn't really think anything of it until, like as the next week or so being on Twitter and seeing that, like, so many other people had the same emotional reaction to that moment of just seeing Chase Infinity is such a beautiful moment of the film, of kind of like a, not like a sigh of relief because of what just happened at the beginning of the film, but kind of as like a understanding of, like, okay, these characters that we're now focusing on, they made it to what they were doing, like, things are okay. and you get this brief moment where things are okay, but it still is just, it's like a random thing, and that is personally to me one of the ways you can tell that Paul Thomas Anderson just really had an excellent control of this film, and as from a director of doing something like that and almost making it a universal thing where we all get emotional by like seeing someone on screen and hearing a song is just really impressive. There is so much about this film I could gush about and talk about forever. And again, if you're new to this channel, I do every year I do category breakdowns where we take a look at every single category at the Oscars, with one battle after another being nominated for 13 categories. I'm going to talk about this film a whole lot more in the next month. Sinners. Trying to leave their troubled lives behind, twin brothers return to their hometown to start again, only to discover that an even greater evil is waiting to welcome them back. The film is nominated for a record-breaking 16 Oscars at the upcoming Academy Awards. Best Picture, Best Director for Ryan Coogler, Best Actor for Michael B. Jordan, Best Supporting Actress for Wunmi Masaku, Best Supporting Actor for Delroy Lindo, Best Original Screenplay, Best Casting, Best Editing, Best Cinematography, Best Production Design, Best Costume Design, Best Makeup and Hairstyling, Best Visual Effects, Best Sound, Best Score, and Best Original Song. Sinners was released in 2025 and was directed by Ryan Coogler. The film stars Michael B. Jordan, Haley Steinfeld, and Miles Caton. And finally we get to Sinners. I think this is kind of, maybe was the most obvious that it was going to be here, A, because I left it in the thumbnail as kind of the revealed one, but also because I think for most people, it's in most people's Letterboxd 4, I would say. It's not necessarily Letterboxd 4, but most people's top 4, top 5, at least people's top 10 films of the year, for the most part. Even the couple people I know in my life that didn't, like, love this to the point that's, like, maybe it's not in their, like, favorites of the year, but it's still, like, they still like it enough that it's still going to be high up there. Like, the most negative people I've seen on it are still giving it, 3.5, 4 stars. Like, it's one of those films that it just is so good at like everything it does that, like, even if you just don't completely come together on like everything, you still can acknowledge there's so many great crafts, so many great things that are going on. And I was having a discussion with one of my good friends who hasn't really kept up with film the way that he used to. Obviously, he's kind of got a family going on now, so he's a little preoccupied to watch as many movies as I do. But we were talking, and because he had seen Sinners, I think he gave it like a 4-star. He liked it, but he was kind of surprised that it got so many Oscar nominations, just because he's not familiar with everything else that this award season things that are being nominated at the Oscars. And I remember kind of sitting there and thinking about it, because this is a discussion that I think a lot of people have had, and I never really wanted to get too into this discussion, but I guess this is a good spot to kind of talk about it, of whether did Sinners deserve 16 Oscar nominations? Did it deserve to break the all-time record for Oscar nominations? And, I wouldn't have been, like, upset if it didn't, and I'm not, like, I'm happy for the film, and I'm happy for everyone involved that it did, but, like, it's one of those, like, I don't necessarily know if it needed all of its nominations. And then I kind of start thinking about it, and it really earned all of its nominations in the sense that it is a film that does everything. There's you think back to like some previous films like Parasite, I think is a good example. Like, that won 4 Academy Awards but was only nominated for 6. Coda won Best Picture and it was only nominated for 3 awards. Right? And it ended up winning all 3 of them that it was nominated for. You just every now and then you get some of these films like Anora last year. Anora was only nominated for 8. 7, somewhere in that range, I think. And so you kind of get these films that end up going on and winning Best Picture, but they're only nominated in a few categories because they just don't really touch on everything. Like, there isn't visual effects in Anora. There isn't, or, to the point that it's going to get nominated. There isn't, in Anora, you don't have, some amazing production design or sound design or I guess you kind of have a little bit, but you get what I'm saying. Coda wasn't going to get, I think Coda got picture, supporting actor, and screenplay, if I'm not mistaken. It wasn't going to get, costume. It wasn't going to get score. It wasn't going to get original song. These categories that it just doesn't fit in. Sinners is so impressive to me because it is a genre film that is like this horror film that branched into everything. It has visual effects because of the obviously the double Michael B. Jordan's is the main thing, but because of the vampires, because of everything revolving some of these characters, some of the things, like obviously there's good visual effects. It's a period piece, so it has great costume design. The whole point is that they're throwing this party at this juke joint that they're starting from scratch, so it's got amazing production design, plus the scene kind of on the street with kind of split in half, where you kind of have like the Asian families on one side and on the other. The big part of it is they're throwing this party at this juke joint, and so it's got phenomenal music. So it has an amazing score that has multiple moments where Miles Caton's character, specifically, I think actually probably the only one, but he's singing original music, and so you've got original songs that are coming in. You have some of the vampire work, and so you've got some great makeup and hairstyling that goes along with that. Again, I kind of talked about already with the music that's going into, so you have a great score, but that also means you've got great sound design. It's just one of those films that you look at some other films, and there's great films that just don't touch every category. Sinners almost feels like, in a way, obviously I know it wasn't. I know Ryan Coogler is a director. I know that this wasn't his intention, but it almost feels like it was a film that was made specifically to just get as many Oscar nominations as possible, because it fits in every category. There's great acting, it's a great script, it's great direction. Obviously, you put all this together, it's a great picture. There's just so much about this film that is just so worthy of being nominated. And I think if it was in some other year, so like, take example for visual effects, if it was some year where Marvel had maybe some better showings, like if this was a couple years ago where Marvel was guaranteed to have one or two of the slots, and maybe if Superman, if DC kind of had its film that kind of stuck in there, and then maybe if you would have had, obviously you kept your Avatar, and you would have had some other things here and there, and maybe the visual effects category would have got a little too crowded, and Sinners couldn't sneak in. But I think Sinners kind of benefited it in a lot of these things where it's like you kind of maybe had a top little 2, 3, 4, and then it's like, okay, well, then we can put Sinners in here. We can get it another nomination for this because it excels at everything it does. So it's a beautiful film. The big thing, like I just talked about with One Battle After Another, we had to talk about Chase Infinity. When we're talking about Sinners, we have to talk about Miles Caton. He is, like, for me, the best supporting actor category was such a interesting category because it was stacked, but like I would have loved Jacoby Jupe would have been my number one, and then Miles Caton would be my number two in the category. I absolutely wish he could have got a little bit more buzz, a little bit more momentum this award season, because he is, in the sense that I just talked about Jacoby Jupe being the heart of Hamnet, Miles Caton is kind of the heart. Chase Infinity is the heart of One Battle After Another. Miles Caton is the heart here of Sinners. Like, it's these newer, younger actors that are the discoveries that so much of the film is kind of, maybe they're not the main character, but they're the heart. They're what is making the film, like, who you're really rooting for. You're absolutely just rooting for Miles Caton throughout this whole night. Everything that's happening, he is like, there's a couple characters here and there that you're rooting for everyone, but there's a couple characters that you're like, you're not going to be super sad if they die, or if something happens to him. But Miles Caton is the one that you are really rooting for. This film has obviously the scene of the year for me, the "I lied to you" sequence, the entire way that you kind of see the history of black music being told. You see the kind of the dancing, the electric guitar player kind of coming in. That whole scene, it's on first watch almost, I mean, it catches you off guard, but it caught me off guard, and I was like, I don't know, like, what's happening? This is kind of weird. And then within the next minute or two, when it all kind of starts making sense to you, and you get to the point of just Miles Caton is singing the song, he's belting kind of the high note, and the camera pans up, and you're seeing the roof burn off the juke joint. Like, there is so much in that scene that is just absolutely beautiful. It is scene of the year. If there's any justice, I Lied to You will win Best Original Song. I don't think it will. It seems like K-Pop Demon Hunters kind of has that locked right now. But there's just so much about this film, every aspect, every category. It's just so beautiful, so well done. Absolutely love Sinners. It's my favorite film of the year. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know down below in the comments what your favorite 2025 films were, and let me know what you think of these specific films that I talked about in this video. And if you'd like to like this video so you don't miss any future episodes in this series, my themed Letterboxd 4 series, I'm going to have the preview for February's theme up in the next couple days. So if you want to subscribe so you don't miss that, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.